Okay, Mike, how are you?
Hi, pretty good. How about you guys? Everything's well on my end.
Good. Fiona, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing great.
Yeah. So I wanted to have a conversation with you guys about going abroad for university because both of you went to the States for your education, right? And I just thought it would be an interesting conversation. Well, actually, I went abroad also. I went to Australia. So apparently I'm not as intelligent as the both of you. But anyway, I thought it would be a good conversation to sort of uh, just to probably talk about how your experience, both of your experiences there in the US and whether or not it's worth it. So the theme is it worth it for Indonesians to go abroad for university? Um, do any of you have, well, first of all, uh, Fiona, maybe you can tell us where your background in the US.
Hi guys, I'm Fiona. I went to the University of California, Berkeley. Um, I studied architecture. Um, but before going to Berkeley, I was spending 2 years in community college in Diablo Valley College. So I did 2 + 2 years program. So 2 years in Diablo Valley College and then 2 years in Berkeley. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
And Mike, what about you? Tell us about your illustrious education background.
Okay, so I went to Rutgers. That's in New Brunswick in New Jersey. So that was 4 years. I studied history and political science with a minor in anthropology, and so that's I graduated in 2014. So that's around like 8 years, 6 years later. So I don't know. I went to University of Maryland Global Campus. I took a master's degree in management with a specialization in Homeland Security Management, and I graduated. I got my master's like a year, 2 years ago, and here I am.
Wait, did you say Homeland Security Management?
Yeah, as the specialization.
Oh, never heard about that. What's that about?
Uh, that's exactly what it sounds like. It's like, well, you know,
Oh
Home
shit.
and
I mean,
security management. Yeah, that's interesting.
yeah. And it's like, threats to like, the country and stuff like that. Since I went to TSA, I worked with TSA for like 5 years. I was like, yeah, that sounds like it's kind of around my alley. And that's how I got into there.
Right, right. So what do you guys, both of you, your initial reaction on the topic? Is it worth it for Indonesians to go abroad, let's say the United States? I know it's a loaded question. There's a lot of, it's a multi-dimensional question, right? Banyak,
Mhm.
I mean, a lot of things to consider. What's your initial thoughts on it, by the way?
Well, it's like it's kind of a like how do you start, I guess, like is how I think about it. Is like you said, is it worth it? But it's like what are you trying to get out of it, right? Like, okay, maybe you want to get a job, you want to get some sort of qualification. And it's also like, you got to take into the costs, right? Like I assume a lot of people, if you're like in Indonesian who can go to America, my thoughts is like, well, your parents are probably well off.
Hmm.
So
Exactly.
the what you call the equation changes, right? Because when I listen to a lot of like arguments like you shouldn't go to college, the argument's like, well, it's expensive. It's like, especially if you're the average person, middle class, like in America, it's like, well, you don't have the money or you have to borrow a lot of money that you're not going to be able to pay back until 10 years, if ever. And you can't like, you know, you can't let go of that debt, not even through bankruptcy. So you're cutting your financial throat, so to speak. But if you're like a rich kid, your parents have money. Well, the question really changes now, doesn't it? It's like the cost, you don't have to worry about the costs. You just have to worry about what you can get out of it. So in that case, I can see the worth in it because the cost changes, the equation changes.
Interesting. I think both of you are very deep thinkers. Like I don't think that far. But
I
if
thought you were from Berkeley.
yeah, but if you ask me like, is it worth it or not? I think it really worth it, the experience. Like you get exposure to many kinds of people, many kinds of different cultures from many countries, because in my opinion, like the United States is like a melting pot. Like people from all over the world comes to the States to study and to pursue their dream, whatever it is. And yeah, we meet there. Um we meet at the school. So I think what makes it worth it is like the experience and the people you get to know when you're there, the network, and also I think just the life experience in general. Because when you study abroad, you learn something different, like out of your comfort zone. Like from here in Indonesia, like you're getting used to a certain thing, certain culture, certain way of life. And when you go out there and live by yourself, I think it's another experience. And it's kind of priceless to have that, actually.
That's probably a big thing though about living on your own for the first time. But that didn't happen with you, right, Mike? Because wait, did it happen with you? Like college,
Well,
was the
kind of,
day that you first moved out of the nest, so to speak?
kind of, sort of, because like I went, when I went my first 2 years in New Jersey, I lived with my brother because he also graduated from Rutgers. So we kind of rent an apartment, but here's the thing, we're still, in a sense, I'm still off from my parents, and I was kind of a quiet kid, a little weird, and
I'm
so
surprised.
yes, so I kind of had to learn to socialize, and it was kind of rough in some ways. And I'll be honest, my first year in college, I did really terrible. And it's like, I'm still kind of pissed off because it's like, if I take away the first year of my grades, my freshman year, I actually would qualify to get a cum laude. I would graduate with honors, but because of my first year where I did really bad, I didn't. And then but on the other hand, it's like, okay, it's like I was, it was like a new thing for me. And in a way, it kind of changes me as a person and for the better, because I kind of needed that kind of slap in the face, to be honest.
Right, right. Getting back to the going abroad thing, let's get out of this is probably politically incorrect of me to do this, but let us just assume that the financiers are set up, right?
Okay.
I'm not going to be woke here. So let's assume everyone has the ability to do
Yeah.
that. Not everyone, we're like insanely lucky, but let us assume that you do have that. Is is uh, is it still worth it for an Indonesian to go through the hassle, or do you think that with the information age today, they can just get as much knowledge in Indonesia? As should they just save up the money, basically?
Well, yeah, so this is sometimes what I'm thinking is like, what's the value of like the term is like liberal arts, right? Like I hear like a YouTuber, like, well, he's dead now, like I forgot his name actually, but he talks about what's the value of liberal arts. And it's not so much what you're really studying per se, but it's about your ability to like to like process all the information you have and actually put out something coherent out of it. And like, so like right now I'm doing a lot of writing. And in a way, like my writing may not have necessarily much to do with like what I study, but here's the thing, is
Right.
because I did this like program where like, oh, I have to read like this, like what you call pages, not pages, I guess like, yeah, pages of books, like, well, PDFs of like 100, 200 page, and they're really boring and dry, and it doesn't make a lot of sense, to be honest. But then you have to write an essay out of it, and it does train you like some discipline, right? Because like, a lot of the things I know is actually like autodidact. I learn it by myself. But
Mm.
if I don't have means of like putting it together coherently, then it's all for nothing. It's just trivia. So you do have to have a way of like learning how to put it together. And in a way, going to college, an actual program of study will help you with that.
But just to be more specific on that, do you think that let's say Western education focuses more on that critical aspect part? Because one thing I know about, let's say, Indonesian or possibly even Chinese, Southeast Asian educations, it's more about, what's the word? Hafalan,
Rote
Memorizing.
memorization.
memorization.
Mm.
Mhm.
It's about the content, not the critical skill that you were
Yeah.
just talking about.
Mhm.
So I guess if there is anything valuable about going abroad, let's say to a Western country and outside of Indonesia, it's probably that, right? That's what I'm
Mhm.
hearing a lot from you.
Yeah. It's like, because I know it's really, fashionable to say, oh, like Asians are really smart. And like, you know, to be honest, I think
Aren't
I'm
we?
kind of,
I thought we were. I thought
well, I am smart, but I don't know about the rest of But to be okay, but here's the thing. I think a lot of them is like they know how to memorize, they know how to do things, like they have to how to memorize, like they know like the flags of every single country in the world or something
exactly.
crazy like
Those
that.
kind of like
Yeah.
the flags and the dates and the
Yeah. But it's like, how can you coherently put them together? I think that's really the question. And like I know a lot of Western education, that's a problem. Like American universities have like, like you said, the woke stuff, like how everything is racist now is, so they're kind of cutting their own throat, to be honest. So I can understand why, like, it's not worth it anymore. But if you're like on the outside looking in, if you're like, you know, if you know what you're doing, like, and you come into naivete and all right, the professor might say something stupid, so just keep that in mind, and maybe so you can get something valuable out of it. you know I know that sounds cynical, but
yeah. What do you think?
Hmm.
Any thoughts? I mean, she went to the most woke of all, Berkeley, right?
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Ouch.
California, and
Mm. I think what I feel as a student in Berkeley, especially when I was studying architecture, is like they taught us to be um, have our own creative thinking.
Mhm.
Like um So one funny thing that I noticed is all of our childhood drawings in Indonesia for Indonesian kids are mostly the same. Like the two mountains with roads in the middle, and then sun in between the mountains, and then like with paddy fields around, and then there's a house on the left, right? Like all kids, if they were asked like to draw something, most of Indonesian kids will draw the same drawing. I think that's kind of shows that the education in Indonesia is like very heavy on uniformity. While in the US, like you have to be unique. You have to be your own individual. You have to be your own, have your own creative thoughts. So when I'm studying in architecture, I can feel a very different approach in terms of design, in terms of solution in the design. So we were usually given like a prompt, like design a library or design something, right? But the approach is very different from everyone. And I'm actually amazed by the design that is produced by my friends from Africa, from Iran, from China, Hong Kong, from anywhere in the world. They show a very unique solution to a problem. I think that's what I realize. It's valuable to have that opportunity to learn from like a different, very different perspective, because yeah, everyone is unique. They have their own independent thinking. They're very creative. I think that's what I appreciate about the education in Berkeley.
But do you think you were brainwashed though? Like, does that sound
Probably.
too idealistic, or sound too idealistic, or it seems like there's not enough discipline there, or standardization, or how do you even grade such a? Doesn't that sound strange to you? Like,
Yeah, I mean, well, I
you
mean,
draw
yeah, I mean,
something, and then each of you have your own opinions, and then what? Everyone gets A's. I mean, that's like the
No.
well,
danger of an Indonesian who goes to like these Western institutions. You can sort of feel like everyone's right. Everyone has their own opinion. Everyone's opinion is the same. And by the way, I'm sorry. You should defend. What do you think? Is that a good education? Is
I think that's just very interesting. Very,
Oh, it's definitely interesting.
yeah, I think that's a very it's a very mind-blowing to see like others people independent thinking, right? Because I also chat with some friends who study architecture here in Indonesia, like people from UI, Universitas of Indonesia,
Yeah.
from Unpar, Parahyangan. They are very smart. They are notable architecture schools here in Indo. But one thing that I noticed, the significant difference is my friends who graduated from local universities are ready to work more than me, because I was taught
You're always right.
because what I thought was very conceptual. We have to be creative, blah blah blah. We have to think like way ahead. But it's when I first came back here, I felt that it's not that applicable. Like
Ouch.
like what I learned is like very dreamy, very conceptual. While when I look at the presentation, the final drawings of my friends who studied here in Indo, they're actually submitting their drawing like in the construction drawing format, so it's like ready to build, like ready to like a proposal
Yeah,
drawing.
much more
Yeah, very
technical.
technical.
By the way, Mike, you went um, even a technical field like architecture can be
Mhm.
butchered by progressivism. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
You went to sociology. Wait, what was
History,
your first degree?
history and political science.
Oh yeah,
Oh
what was that
wow.
like? Was there any, did they butcher that also, or was it still
Well,
like realistic? Back then the woke
yeah,
the
back when I, went there, it was like 2010. So like
okay.
the rot hasn't really like, when I hear stories coming out of American universities nowadays, it's like, wow, I'm so glad I already graduated and I don't have to deal with this nonsense. But it's like you will hear like the professor's biases. I remember taking like a course in like communism, history of communism and socialism, and the guy's a literal communist. So that's an
He was
interesting.
literally a communist.
Yeah, he's a communist. He's
But
like,
that's good. Isn't that good though?
it is it is a good thing because I actually have to hear what a real communist have to say. So okay, so I get what he's trying to say, and same with like a lot of the history, like a lot of other courses, excuse me, like now a lot of the like my professors, they're all definitely like liberals, and I think I can only think of one professor where it's like, okay, he's not an outright leftist. So it's so your ideas do get challenged. Like I said, this is why I keep saying, you don't just absorb everything you get to hear. You really have to like, you get think critically, I guess. So you have to like, okay, this guy's a communist, so maybe what he has to say about like communism or socialism is gonna be a little biased. But I actually understand what communists actually believe. So that again, is it like woke or whatever? I mean, I guess the seeds are there, but it's like, again, it's like you just have to be smart about it. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think we already painted Western institutions pretty badly. We should probably cut it out now. What's the benefits of going like to, actually you said something. What's the benefits do you think today, Mike, we're talking about today. I know it seems
Mhm.
um pretty bad now in terms of the lack of objectivity and practicality of
Mhm.
degrees today. It seems very like today,
Mhm.
if like my cousin 15-year-old cousin wants to go to the States or something like that, I would just say, don't waste your money. Just find something practical in Indonesia, learn a technical skill, be humble, make sure someone tells you you're dumb once in a while instead of, everyone's opinions matter. Um, just stay in Indonesia, don't bother. But is there any more
Yeah.
point like going to the US, for
Okay,
example?
so the practical things, like I don't know.
I think it's definitely a
Okay,
plus
But
point. Like if you're having a degree from abroad, especially I think up to this point, like
okay, you're
yeah,
cutting out.
yeah, yeah.
I
It's
can't
it's like
hear
it's
you.
like having a credibility, like having a credibility and also the network you get from actually going there, in comparison of just studying online, for example. Like it's still different. Like when you attend the school and then meet the communities there and then get to know the professors, get to know the friends, like you get the network and you get the experience. I think that's still something different. Like it cannot be replaced by, for example, just taking online classes. And yeah.
Yeah, like I do agree in that sense. It's like, again, you, like I said before, you do, like, I think you have to be like outside of like the nest at least like for a bit before, like, you can actually be considered an adult kind of thing. It's like, I don't know, because I've been seeing like I don't know what's going on like with my friends and families. It's like, but it's like, I don't know, it's like we're not growing up. I think that's was one thing to put it. It's like people aren't getting married, they're not starting families. And like maybe it's like the parents are too close to you, at least in Indonesia. It's like, I don't know what but that's kind of the conclusion I'm getting into.
Did you just open a can of worms you regret opening? Yeah, that's a whole nother thing.
You know,
Yeah. About the credibility, I think Fiona just mentioned
yeah, I
something
mean,
about, yeah, about credibility. I think Fiona just mentioned something about credibility. There's this question that I had, are degrees from abroad still, are they still seen as valuable as they were, say, from our parents' generation? Because one thing that we know for sure, one thing that I know for sure, my father, when he graduated his MBA in 80, I don't know, 88 something, um, it was like a big deal back then. An Indonesian having
Yeah.
an American degree, that was like, wow, you must be
Something.
something. You must be smart. You must be blah blah blah. Um,
mhm.
Fiona, how did people treat you differently? Is it still a thing? Did you
I
feel?
still somehow, yes. Like, um, at first, I somehow feel a bit intimidating or also intimidated by people who sees me as, oh, this is a Berkeley graduate, blah blah blah. Like they have higher expectation of me, especially as a fresh grad at that moment, maybe. Like you're expected to do this. Oh, this is must be easy for you. That just design a skyscraper or something. This must be easy for you. Like you can do it. Like they have a higher standard and higher expectation towards
Foreign.
yeah people who have that credibility. So but in my opinion, like when we were given that trust, or when we were given that um expectation, that we sometimes feel like, oh, I don't deserve it, or maybe oh, I'm not that expert yet because I just graduated. That I have that thought back then. But now that I think rethink about it, like I feel like I'm getting more opportunities because of that trust, because of that credibility that I have from my degree. Like they trust me more. They think that I'm more capable. Like I get more offer, I get more opportunities coming in. And I think that's beneficial still until today. Like when you have that trust, you know.
Mike, did you receive the same love, or is it just a girl thing?
I don't know. I that makes sense, I think that makes sense. Because I think because there is something lacking in, like, Indonesian, I don't know, infrastructure. I guess that's how I would put it, education. So there is some, you know, it's like, I don't know, the labor, because like if you see, like, just look at Jakarta, it's kind of a mess. So obviously there's something lacking in there. So it makes sense that people do gonna go abroad and gonna get skills. It's like when you're an athlete, say a soccer player, you're gonna go to Europe, or your basketball player gonna go to America. It's like that's where that's where you're gonna go to like hone your craft. And with Indonesia, it's like I mean, I remember my brother was like telling me that like the people who like fix computers, like computer, because he works in tech, right? So like he noticed that the Indonesians who work in like who fixes computers and stuff like that, electronics, they don't really have a fundamental understanding of the computers. They just know, okay, if I do this, it's gonna work. If I do that, it's gonna do that. That's how far it goes. To them, it's like magic. It's like, see here, it's like, it's like, but like maybe if you go to America with the understanding, like, okay, I want to learn, like, say you want to learn IT. Okay, you gonna learn the fundamentals of computers. And maybe you're not gonna get that in an Indonesian education. I don't know, in an Indonesian college. But in America, you will, because my brother did, and I did take a course of computer science. It's like a low level one, but I kind of get an understanding of coding just a little bit. So you learn the fundamentals, I guess, depending on what your field is, and that's the value of Western education.
Yeah, maybe Indonesian education, like we said before, it's much more practical and uh, memorization. Like the example that you use, people fixing computers in Indonesia, here they're called tukang, right?
Mm-hmm.
In America, they're called engineers, right? Because they probably study like mechanical engineering or yeah, computer science or something. But in here, they probably go to a technical college where it's purely practicality. It's a trade. It's not knowledge. It's a trade. It's like uh, yeah, it's a trade instead of an actual deep knowledge. I'm not sure if
Mm-hmm.
it's making sense now, but
I mean,
yeah.
even trade, like, it's like, I don't know, because I don't know, because I don't think it's just an Indonesian thing, but it's like we see trades as like, low class, so we didn't really think too much about it. But it's like, well, maybe if you work in computers, or if you keep the AC going, maybe that's a very important skill, like even if you're not paid a lot, you know.
Yeah. Do you think that actually you probably just answered it, but Mike, do you think that your degree gives you an advantage over locals?
I
Because
mean,
you recently just
yeah.
moved back, right?
Hmm.
What's your opinion?
Yeah,
Did
yeah,
that shirt make them want to give you an interview, for example?
I think I think it should be. I mean,
You think so,
I
huh?
mean, I yeah, I mean, I don't see why not. There's like that's the thing. It's like, okay, because like that's like what my dad's been telling me. It's like, well, if you're like, you go to college in America, so basically you people are gonna be willing to take you more seriously than if you go to a college in I don't know, like Bandung. Well, not that's still a big city. Let's say Palembang or something. It's like when you go to Harvard, it's like people's gonna think, oh, this guy must be smart. And I remember like a joke that I think was like Bill Burr or something. It's like, well, I went to Harvard, and it's not like the classes are difficult, but it's like the classes are just like any other class. But people will think you're smart because you are accepted there. And I think that's how it is with like, this guy went to America, went to Australia or Europe, and this guy must be smart, because if he's not, he probably would have gone to college in like Depok or something. It's like,
Yeah.
and it's like there's a perception to it.
Yeah. there's a certain superficiality, isn't there? A certain naivete in that in that
Yeah.
that just because you went somewhere you must be smart. I think it's certainly very naive. Um, for if I can just uh, say this, I think it certainly opens up a lot of doors, but once you're
Mm-hmm.
in,
Mm-hmm.
stop caring pretty quickly. Do you no?
I
No?
think what I'm thinking is, I think there are two types of smart: book smart and
Yeah.
street smart.
Mm-hmm.
So they expect us to be like book smart here, but the fact is, when we first came back here, we need some adjustment. So we are not that street smart,
Mm-hmm.
compared to someone who studies here and then gain experience from here with local contacts. It's truly different than uh, what we get from abroad. But after a while, of course, we can do that adjustment, and then maybe not that long. So yeah, we can catch up with the locals. But in my opinion, um, if you if you have never experienced going abroad, like it's harder for you to catch up with someone that have gone abroad, because you only know like this
Hmm.
much, and then compared to someone who goes there, knows something, and then goes back, needs to adjust. But
I
you
mean, more
know
of a global mindset.
yeah, somehow,
Is there
because
something?
you get exposure, right? You get exposure from somewhere else, you learn another culture that might not be suitable here, but you can also catch up still.
Mike, any thoughts? I have something to say,
Yeah.
but do you have something?
Yeah. I think the global mindset thing, I don't know if that's how I would put it, but yeah, but you do need to be aware of like, yeah, there's a larger world out there, and like, like even if it happens like, far away, it's still gonna affect you. So you do need to be aware of it at the very least. And yes, like going abroad, that's gonna help you like understand what's going on. And you learn that, hey, what you're doing here, it's not necessarily how other people do with. And then you might have to figure out like, okay, that might not I might have to do things differently too. You don't have to don't always do things the same way.
That was probably the thing that, the more I grew up, the more I realized how important that was, that global mindset. I used to, sometimes people tell me, my friends who studied in local universities, they tell me, oh, you must have gained so much experience and so much, you must have seen so much and learned other people's culture. And in the beginning, I said, yeah, but who cares? Like, you can see that on TV. Like, everyone can see that. But the more I grow up, the more I realize, oh, well, if you actually live somewhere and actually talk to someone from Mozambique, which one of my friends is from Mozambique. One of my best friends, actually, we still talk today. And Afghanistan, like when you actually spend time with someone like completely different from you, and Russians, and it's those things does put a stamp in the way that you um, see and perceive the world. I was probably very naive and very gullible and up myself when thinking that nah, that's not important. Like, just watch TV, you stupid. I mean, that's not that simple, right?
Yeah.
It's
Watching it is different, right? Because you don't interact with the people on screen.
yeah, but yeah, that exposure, I think, is for lack of a better word, is it's definitely a good way to for that global mindset. So if you do have the funds, that's probably the biggest thing that I think is important about Western education.
Mhm.
I don't think it's the technical. Let's argue about this. I don't think it's the technical knowledge at all.
Mhm.
It's not that you can get that anywhere.
Mm.
You think that's true?
To an extent, that's why, like
Mm.
I said, the knowledge per se, I guess you can just read a book, but it's like, how do you put it together coherently?
Mhm.
That's, and you do need like some discipline, some education, and maybe Western education isn't the best way of doing it, but is Indonesian education a good substitute for that? Well, I don't know. To be honest, I don't know, but that's kind of the question, isn't it?
Do you wish that you learned more about the technicalities of architecture instead of all the artsy?
Mm, I think I somehow wish, but what I notice is having that creativity is also important. So imagine if everyone designs the same way, like what I'm feel lacking in Indonesia right now is the we don't have that um modern architecture identity, if you know what I mean. In Indonesia we have rumah adat, we
Mhm.
have I think that's what makes us unique. But in terms of modern architecture, up until today, I don't feel like we have something like what is our modern architecture identity. That's something that I keep questioning, because there are very few architects, in my opinion, in Indonesia who are brave enough to have a bold design that speaks more of their idealism. Because right now, if you see like house design or like stores design, it's not like it's not like having that Indonesian identity. Like they just follow like Scandinavian or maybe Japanese design or maybe industrial design or maybe like classical design, like all the luxury houses,
Go back to the education.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't go so far to the architecture.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is, from my experience is, having that freedom of thinking, having that creativity is also important, because imagine if everyone knows the technicalities very well, they will just be like followers, but they're not.
Don't say leaders.
No, they don't have that, you don't have that creative out of the box idea
Yeah.
of a problem solving. So when there's a problem, like I get to see uh different approach or can offer different solutions to a problem. I think that's what make it valuable to study abroad, to have that kind of thinking.
Mm.
Is it that black and white? Do you guys think?
I mean, I
Eastern,
think there's some. Mhm.
Western, and then you just have to
I think it's
choose.
also depends on your niche, like what are you studying? In my experience, it's architecture, but maybe different when you study like um
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know, computer science, engineering, or something. Maybe they have more knowledge, more technology to learn by studying abroad compared to here. For
Yeah.
example, I have a friend who's in like food biology or something, food chemistry, or maybe mechanical engineering, that kind of stuffs. I think for me, I think it's more beneficial for them to gain knowledge, to gain more information about the technology, about the science behind it and everything.
Because the best
Yeah.
scientists and researchers are from
Yeah.
the States and
Yeah,
things like
that's
that.
true. Also, when you mentioned research, I think in the US, like they have a better research than here. Like they don't do they don't have much ecosystem for it.
Over here.
Yeah, over here.
Yeah, well, that goes back to the infrastructure of a developing country, right?
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely true that it depends what you're studying also. Um,
Mm-hmm.
if you are, this is a complex issue, but if you are taking let's say something really, really technical like physics, right? You'll probably get really, really good quality, much higher quality professors in like Columbia compared to UGM. That's just the reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in that very, very hard technical subjects, yeah, like going abroad is 10 times better. I mean, but I guess it depends on the subject also. Is that correct, you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that checks out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it depends on so first you have to know what you wanna be, or maybe what you wanna learn at least. So is it worth it to go that far to have that um experience and also knowledge by studying abroad? It really depends.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the question I'm thinking is like, what can Indonesian universities do that American ones can't, or British, European, or Western ones? What can Indonesian do? What do they have over, the Western institutions? So I guess as you go from there, because like if we're lacking in physics, okay, so obviously the Indonesians do need to go abroad to study physics. I mean, assuming he doesn't stay in America, because that can happen. Same with like finance, economics,
Oh
all the
yeah.
other things. Like, what can Indonesian institutions do that Americans can't? So if the answer is this and that, okay, so obviously I can't just stay here. I need to go abroad, you know?
I guess the going back, if you do have the funds, it's just too much of a it's just too much of a difference. It's like comparing Indonesia and Australia or Indonesia and the United States as a country as a whole. Actually, their universities is a reflection of the state of the country itself, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of an unfair fight
Mm-hmm.
getting into things like inequality here. But if you do have the funds, then you will just have much more access to the research. And we also talked about the experience, the exposure, the global mindset. So in that sense, if you do have the funds, um, and bearing in mind what we also said about subjects, it's probably a really good idea to have that exposure and experience. But like, should you borrow funds? No, no. Like, don't do that. Yeah, I mean, even in the US,
Lots of
they're
scholarship.
doing that, right?
Mhm.
This
Mhm.
what is it called? Education debt bubble. Everyone,
Yeah, but that
Student loan.
student debt,
student
yeah,
loan
Yeah.
crisis in
yeah,
America.
student loan. Yeah.
Even people in America themselves, citizens of America, said, probably college is not such a good thing because I don't want to be in $150,000 debt. So if they're not gonna do it to their own university, you sure as hell as an Indonesian shouldn't go into debt to go there. You understand my
Yeah,
logic? I
exactly.
mean, if you do have the funds as an Indonesian, yes,
Mhm.
by all means, but never ever stretch or put anything at risk. It's not worth it at
Yeah.
all because even the Americans will not
Mhm.
are not willing to make that investment.
Yeah. And if you don't get the money, don't do it.
Isn't it funny that that's our conclusion after all this stuff? You have the money, do it. If you don't, nah, don't do it.
Mm.
Mhm.
Hmm. Anything else? Anything else you want to add before we?
Mm.
No, you can say no. No.
Mm. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think the education in here in Indo is really good too.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, studying here is also yeah, there are really some good schools, and now they are doing really great or even better than some people who go abroad. I mean, education is important, but it's not everything because it is also there are a lot of factors. And if you calculate like the worth it as is it worth it to go to gain that success, because education is not the most important thing, but because there are a lot of other factors like your social skills and everything and your network and your grit and passion and everything. So yeah, I think studying anywhere is actually fine, it's actually good, but if you have that funds and have that opportunity, I think it's nice to have that global experience.
Yeah, but never risk anything financially.
Yeah.
Right. Anything else to add, Mike, or is that a good conclusion?
Well, I just gonna say one thing. It's like I think people are too focused on status. I think that's the issue.
Yeah.
Like, for example, it's like I remember I was like, it's kind of a peer pressure. That's the reason I went to university as soon as I graduate from high school. Like, if I can do it again, I would probably wait a year. So that's probably similar with like going to school here in Indonesia or in America. Are you really trying to get a best education you get for yourself, or is it just a status thing? Because my friends do it, or like this person does it. So if you, so that's where we need to think about it, not like the kind of status marker, which is I think kind of how people look at it, unconsciously perhaps, but that's how they a lot of them look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of it's a loaded question, isn't it? Is it worth it? Like
Mhm.
a lot of things are underneath all of that.
Mhm.
But I guess our conclusion is if you do have the funds, yes. But then, as usual, you brought us something very deep. Like it goes back to you, I guess. Like, what are you trying to do here? Are you trying to impress your parents or like that girl that you like went there and then you want to right? It's probably something like Freudian psychology, something silly at the end of the day, right? That you need to get out of. If that's like your reason, then you have bigger problems, I think, than which university you go to.
Mm.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for this. I think we did like 1.5 hours, which is the longest.
All
Thank you,
right, cool.
Fiona.
You're
Yeah,
welcome. Glad
probably.
to be here.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, thanks,
That's
Alvin.
yeah.
As always, nice to meet you, Fiona. Have a
Yeah.
nice day.